here who are watching the questions, and if there's anything you need from us, please enter a question. If you're on Zoom, you can do that on chat. Otherwise, enter it on Facebook, and the questions will be taken from Facebook and placed on my chat wall so I can see the questions as they come in. I do have a few questions that were given to us ahead of time, and so we will be bouncing back and forth between those questions and then also questions from Facebook and from Zoom as people come in. So I do appreciate you all here. In a recent survey that my city council district took in our newsletter, public safety was the #1 function of a city and the #1 thing that we should be devoting resources to. And that has been my focus, and I know it's the chief's focus, and we want to make sure that we fully fund the police department in the way that we are able to, even in difficult budget times. We're going to get into that later, but before I do, I first want to welcome the chief. Thank you so much for giving us this hour of your time. I know you're a busy guy.
My pleasure, Councilmember.
Any opening comments you'd like to make?
I just really much appreciate. I've always appreciated your support for the men and women and the job that we do. So thank you very much. I don't think I think people think that goes without saying, but I can tell you I've been here nearly 30 years, and that's not always the case. So I very much appreciate your support. I'm very glad, happy that we're able to reach out to our community via technology in these times. And I thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. I know you're always so willing to come to our neighborhood association meetings and answer questions for us. So the fact that you're here quasi-live with us, well, live but not in person, let's put it that way, live not in person, that I really appreciate that. This is how we communicate with folks today. So the first question I want to address with you is related to George Floyd and the tragedy that happened in Minnesota. I know you probably have some thoughts on this subject, and I know you've released a statement on this subject yesterday. Would you care to share your thoughts with us, and how do you make sure that this doesn't happen in the city of San Jose?
Well, first of all, I'll just speak from the general terms. Actually, I just got on a call. I just got off of a call prior to this with the Major City Chiefs Association of America, that we were denouncing the actions that occurred and the inaction, and I'll get to that in a little bit. I don't know if people are aware, but they've just arrested the officer whose knee was on Mr. Floyd's neck just recently. That news just came out. But obviously, when I saw the video, I was appalled by it. I was disturbed by it. One of the things that I've said many times is that I will speak at the top of my lungs and defend my men and women when they're right, regardless of the noise. But as law enforcement leaders, when we see a wrong, we have to speak just as loudly for our community. You can support your men and women and support your community at the same time. Those are not two mutually exclusive things. And so, I'm actually, as I said, no one's above the law. What I saw was not something that is something that I want my officers to be doing. I actually, prior to the call that I was just on, I was at the police academy this morning addressing class 37 recruits that are going to graduate the academy in less than a month. And I believe I went out there with Pastor Jason Reynolds from Emmanuel Baptist Church. We watched the video together. I know it was painful for Pastor Jason. And we addressed the recruits. Told the recruits if any of them thought that anything they saw that video was okay, to please get up and leave because I don't want them here. And their fellow brother and sister officers don't want them here either. It was a message strong, and I left them with, there's a lot of hope. If you be a good cop, you're going to be the future of this department. Our community needs us. I haven't been to a neighborhood in the city of San Jose that has ever told me that they want less police. They want more of us, but they want to be policed fairly. That's a precious gift. I told that to the recruits, that not every city can have that, and that their community, although they will hold them accountable when need be, supports their police department, and they have to treat that as a precious gift. So they're given now an opportunity to understand the relationship between the police and communities of color, and why that is strained, and why they need to work harder now and realize the original sin that they're born with in this job because of the historical issues with law enforcement in our communities. And so we just need to be loud about it. I think what we're judged as a police department is not to say that it will never happen anywhere. We hire from the human race. We're going to make mistakes. But I think what we're judged by is what police departments are doing to avoid these type of incidents occurring here in San Jose. And, we've undertaken a lot of training, whether it be implicit bias training, whether it be procedural justice training, whether it be different policies and procedures with our use of force. Obviously, body-worn cameras has helped, although it's not the panacea. We've, de-escalation training. We've done a lot of de-escalation training so that officers could do other things. We put our use of force statistics publicly so our public can be transparent as to when we use force, how often we use force. I think later on today, there'll be a use of force study coming out that I think will show, in my opinion, that we are moving the needle in the right direction. We're not there. We're not perfect, but it's something that we always have to continue to strive. And really, I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is just to seen a lot of police officers and police chiefs denouncing what they saw. You didn't see that before. You haven't seen that before. This is actually one of the first times that I think that I have seen so many of my colleagues nationally come out opposed to this. And I think we're going to continue to strive to work with our communities and continue to look internally to see how we can make ourselves better in the hope that something like this doesn't happen in any of our cities.
I appreciate that statement because it really goes to your integrity and the integrity of the men and women who work for you and work for us to protect us. It's really important that when people call the police department, be they people of color or not, that they don't feel that you're going to protect them and help them and not that you're going to harm them. So we can't respect the actions that occurred in Minneapolis and the fact that or the way the police handled it, the 4 police officers. The reaction of the community is not unanticipated and they're angry and upset. So I really appreciate that. We don't want this to happen in San Jose, of course, but there's still bias that exists in San Jose too. So training is really important. And I had follow-up questions, but you already answered them regarding training and some of the things that you do to make sure that your officers are prepared for these kind of situations. So I thank—
If I can just add one thing, Councilmember, I will say it all starts also with the quality of police officer. I think one of the things that we've stayed strong and true, even through our dire times that I have lived through, having been here nearly 30 years, and most recently with the issues in the department, is that we never lowered our standard, to try to get, a different type of police officer here. And I think really it starts with the type of officer you hire. Again, that's not the panacea. It's also the diversity of this police department. We've scoured the ends of the earth looking for diversity in this police department. I've sent my recruits everywhere. And my goal is that this department resembles the community that it serves. And that has been found to be a way to battle implicit bias, is to the diversity of your department, which is another key, goal that we've had.
Right. And to that end, I'm so thrilled to have Captain L. Washburn as the captain of the Southern Division. As a female, it's wonderful to see her in charge, and she just does a stupendous job for us keeping our community safe. So thank you for that and for her and being concerned about diversity. I'm going to move on. We don't have, we have less than an hour and a lot of questions to get through. So let's get through some of the questions. Could you give us an update on the police department as it relates to COVID-19? How has the police department impacted how you operate and the types of the calls that you're receiving? How are your police officers responding to be at risk for contracting COVID as they're out in the field?
That's a great question. One of the things that I'm really proud of is probably about 3 weeks before the shelter-in-place order came out. We spoke about it. I spoke with my deputy chief in charge of training and administration, and we talked about what are we going to do if this hits. And so we started taking measures back then, ordering PPE, ordering hand sanitizer. We don't brief indoors. We haven't briefed indoors for a very long time. One of the dynamics, we're a centralized police department, meaning we don't have precincts. And so everybody briefs right in one room. It's a large room, but again, at any given time, I can have up to 120 officers in one room for a shift. And so what we decided on doing is splitting up every single team in this city, and they just brief out in their communities. So that way they're not in one big room throughout the time. Checking on health and temperatures, and ensuring that the officers know that. Set policy that, when officers contact individuals, that they're masked, individuals that are arrested masked, that we've maintained transport cars. One of the things that I made a commitment to this community is that we were going to stay fully operational. There's some police departments that have done less through these times. We're not one of those. One of the things people have asked me before is, what are you going to do when we're out of shelter in place? How are you going to police the city? And I said, well, we're policing the city today the same way we were policing it 6 months ago. And I used to be a Pop Warner coach, and I'll tell you now what I used to tell my kids is that, you know what, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And that's what this police department's done. We instituted a team that kept track of all of our officers' health. I will tell you, throughout this pandemic, I've only had 6 staff members come down with COVID-19. All of them are doing well. The original was a reserve officer who did have a rough go. He was in the ICU for a while in a respirator, but now he's out and on the mend. And so we've been very fortunate. The other issue is the testing that I know a lot of people fought for. So we can immediately test officers that are symptomatic. And we've had nearly 65 to 70 negative tests on officers. So that enables me to get them back to work. One of the things that astonishes me, and I don't think it's luck, I don't think it's necessarily luck, I think it's a lot of things that we've done, is the fact that we have not changed how we run this police department and how we provide public safety. And I've only had one patrol officer who's now able to work again, that's been tested positive. With all the interactions that we have with the community, all the interactions we have with each other, to only have 6 staff members and only one patrol officer in our community is very, very fortunate. And so the morale of the department is extremely high. I'll tell you, I've said this before, but if you came in and spoke to officers, you would have to ask yourself, do these officers know what's going on in the outside world? Because the morale is very high. We probably had the least amount of sick calls that we've ever had. And it's been amazing to watch. It's not lost on me that the officers as well, do a very difficult job, but they're sheltered in place as well. So when they get out of work, there's not a lot of things for them to do to de-stress, like everyone else, right? So they're coming to work, doing a stressful job, but then not having the ability to de-stress and do other things. And they've just risen to the challenge. They've done amazing. The health of this police department is extremely high, and hopefully will continue. One of the things that I've told people many times before, communicable disease is nothing new to a police department. We can get out of shelter in place at some point, but a COVID-19, until there's a vaccine, will always be part of us. And after COVID-19, there'll be something else. And so that's always part of our job. But we're learning on the go. We're writing things down to ensure that future generations of administrations have a handbook to be able to go back to. But I'm very pleased with internally our response to this pandemic.
That's great. I have a few other questions following up about COVID, but so how do you help take care of the mental health of your officers? Because your officers are in a high risk position. I worry about the mental health, my own mental health, and that of my team and other employees and people just staying in home the whole time, and how that is impacting their mental health. But you're in a high risk job. Are there other tools in place or assistance for your officers that helps them in a mental health capacity?
Yeah, we've reached out to our rank and file. We have a CMU unit, which is a crisis management unit, where they know that they have someone to talk to if they ever need help. Obviously, if officers are involved in high risk type of situations, we've been involved in an officer involved shooting. Those officers do see professional help before they come back on duty. But most importantly, really, we rely on each other. One of the things of police work, when we talk ourselves about being a family, that's not cliche. We really truly think about ourselves being family. And I'll tell you, every one of my officers is a counselor. I know I've been a counselor for fellow officers many times. I know I have confided in my fellow brother and sister officers as a counselor many times, and we lean on each other. And so that's a help, I think, that that we don't maybe look to as a an official uh, help network, but we really are each other's first counselors.
Yeah.
The conversations that go out in the field between beat officers is valuable. It's invaluable, quite frankly, and that's where it starts. But certainly, mental health is a huge issue for our rank and file. We're always trying to keep our finger on the pulse. It's one of the things we tell our supervisors to do. And so I think we have a decent handle on it.
Great. So I know that the county released many criminals from our jails with lesser sentences because of COVID. This has my residents very nervous and very concerned about people who are out on the streets who should be in jail serving their sentence. So can you give us some follow-up on who's being released, how are you seeing any rise in crime in relation to this? How can we respond to our community and make them feel comfortable in the efforts that are being made in that regard?
Yeah, so let me start off with when the pandemic started. I mean, I saw that there was a reason to reduce the population of our custody facilities. However, the plan was with the district attorney's office actually also is that it was going to be lower level crimes where individuals were close to the release date as it was. What has happened since then, which I do not agree with, and what you alluded to, is the zero bail issue that's occurring. And basically, there's a mandate from the state that gives judges latitude, although some judges in this county don't seem to follow that latitude, is to, unless you're arrested for, there's actually specific, I think a dozen crimes for that you're going to be released on zero bail, back out into the community. That has not been positive, not only in San Jose, but in this entire state. It's a disaster. I'm not happy with it. And we've had some horror stories where individuals have been released only to commit crimes again, and we have to go out there again to get them. We've had judges do it multiple times, and I've been very vocal about it. And so, the officers are working hard. One thing that I tell people all the time, that the police officer has to go back 20 times, they'll go back 20 times. But certainly we're working. Sorry, hold on. Lights went off. We're working with our district attorney's office to ensure that we're able to make an argument in front of the bench and to the judges to ensure that these individuals are kept behind bars. I mean, there's a lot of issues surrounding that. But I will say crime right now, I will say, and it's not by virtue of the shelter in place, excuse me, but our violent crime in the city, we started keeping track of all of our crime rates the day shelter in place began. And what we're doing is we're comparing the time frame that we're in to the same exact time frame last year. And our crime rates are very positive. I mean, our violent crime is down 20%, and our property crime is down 19 or about 19% since the start of shelter in place. It's total Part 1 crimes, which are their major crimes, are down total a little over 19%. So that's positive for us. I will say it's ticking upward. When we first started, the crimes were a lot lower than it was at the same time last year. But as the weeks keep going, it begins to creep up. Although, speaking to my colleagues in other major cities, we're doing a lot better than a lot of other cities are with regards to crime within the shelter in place. But I would say zero bail is an issue that's impacting us. That if you read the fine print on zero bail, it's what concerns me the most, is that zero bail, unless it's amended, it stays in effect 90 days past the emergency order. So we may be in stage 3 as an example of shelter in place, of stage 3 of rebounding. But unless that emergency order is removed, which I can't foresee it being removed until, there's literally a much more better grasp on the pandemic, the zero bail will stay not only until that emergency order is rescinded, but 90 days after.
Mm.
So, so that's something that's concerning to me, and that we've had those examples, not just in San Jose, but in other parts of the state.
So how do our neighbors ensure that their community is safe? What advice do you have for them to protect their communities and their households?
Well, the first thing that I will say is to be our eyes and ears. We are a fully operational police department. The same criminals that we were taking off the street 6 months ago are the same criminals we're taking off the street today. And so calling us, it's not that we have reduced services. We're doing everything that we did before. So knowing that and letting your residents know that, you have a fully operational police department. You call them for whatever. This COVID's not going to stop them from doing their job. Obviously one of the issues that we've had is commercial burglaries have gone up a little bit or have ticked up a little bit. Everything's still down, but we've seen little spikes here and there. And that's understandable in that, we're a large city. And we have businesses that have been shuttered because of COVID-19. And so what we're doing is really trying to go out to the business owners and trying to find ways that, to check in on their businesses, doing things that make it appear as the businesses are open, and things of that nature. I've said it many times and I'll say it again. I'd love that everybody in the city, every resident, every business in the city have surveillance cameras on their homes. You and I both know we've been through this, unfortunately, but I think that's very important, and we've solved a lot of crime that way. Those are some things that I definitely would do. But again, ultimately, this police department, we made a commitment when this started that if anybody thought that they were going to take advantage of this city during this pandemic, that they were going to be woefully mistaken. And I think we've lived up to that.
Good, thank you. So your comment about the cameras leads me to plug an initiative that we have through District 9, and that is our camera rebate program. So we have an opportunity, if you're installing a camera at your home and then register it with the police department, then we will give you a rebate up to $100,000. I was going to say $100,000. No, they're not that expensive. $100.
That's a really good system, Councilmember.
That's a really good program. Yeah. No wonder the city's going bankrupt. No, just kidding. $100 rebate. Apply. We are going to post the link on the chat wall and also in Facebook. So if you live in District 9, please contact us and have purchased a camera between July 1st of 2019 through June 30th of 2020, then you are eligible for a rebate. All we need is a receipt of purchase, and then we also need to know that you have registered it with the police department. And just so you know, the police department does not have access to your cameras, but they know that you have, the registration means that they know you have one. It just makes their job a little bit easier. They don't have to go out and canvass the neighborhood to find the cameras that are around. And I know they're not all high res. I know they all don't pick up the license plates like that you see them do on TV so easily, but they're helpful and useful in tracking. And the other thing is, so please, if you are buying a camera, let us know. And it can also be a Ring technology too. It doesn't have to be a physical camera. The other thing that the chief did not mention about being safe and reporting crime is please report crime to the police department and don't just post it on Nextdoor. The police department is not watching Nextdoor and then logging in the crime that way. The only way that they know what's going on and that they can track it and respond is if you contact them directly, either a 911 or a 311 call, depending on the urgency of the issue. Would you agree with that, Chief?
100%.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know we have a lot of questions and people are asking questions, so I'm just going to, I had a long question about the budget, and You and I have talked about the budget and the Hire Ahead program, and the budget initially presented remove the Hire Ahead program and the downtown police patrol, foot patrol, and other programs that were very important in keeping our community safe. And public safety, I'll say it again, is the number one thing that this city does, is making our residents feel safe in their home. It's a quality of life issue. So I know that's changed a little bit in the last couple of days, and it seems a little bit more positive. So would you like to share with us your take on the budget?
Well, we got to wait till hopefully it gets voted in. But yes, I mean, we've come kind of full circle in a way. A few weeks ago, the Hire Ahead program is really important for us. It's part of our plan. I know our residents want more law enforcement on the streets. And we started the Hire Ahead program because we can't wait for retirees to leave to then start an academy class that's not going to be ready to be operational for a year, because that's how long it takes me to train an academy recruit. We'll never grow that way. So the first step that we need to do is ensure that we have some money set aside so that if I know I have X amount of officers retiring next year, that I can start those officers now, so that when those officers leave, then those officers are trained and ready to go and take their place.
Yep.
So obviously a few weeks ago, we lost that.
Yep.
And so, we were going to be stuck where we're at for a while until we could figure that out. Recently, we've had some positive news that hopefully we'll be getting that back. And I know that's going to have to be voted on, but obviously very positive direction for us, along with some monies to redistrict the city. And what that means as well is normally a police department should redistrict. That means it should redo the boundaries by which officers go out to patrol their areas for calls for service, population, anecdotal stories about crime, and then realign those. We haven't been able to do that for over 20 years. And they actually say that you should probably do it within 10 years. And so once and for all, that would help with calls for service, our response times, and things of that nature. So we just got our funding. Hopefully we'll get the funding back to do that as well. Yeah. But again, the most important thing is a Hire Ahead program. If there's one thing for the health of this department to continue to grow, is Hire Ahead. The fact that we are not freezing public safety positions is another huge thing. There's other police departments that are. Our academies are full. We have our academy that's in there now because of COVID. We can't have two at the same time, but one graduates June 26th, which is a Friday. The other one starts back up on Monday. People are applying. Our academies are full. We're getting officers from other agencies that want to be part of San Jose and our family. So I'll be honest with you, this last week we've had that great news. Has been fantastic, because I tell you, I've been the chief for 4.5 years. I'm in my 5th year as chief, and I was the assistant chief for 3 years before. So I've seen the department at its lowest, and to see it rise again at some point. I've said this before, but I think in mythology, there's an individual that got punished by rolling a heavy boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back before he gets it to the top. And I'll be honest with you, when I got the word of the Hire Ahead being taken away, it almost felt like that. So I'm very happy that hopefully we'll get it back, and that the residents can continue to see this department grow.
There were a few of us on council who still wanted to protect that Hire Ahead program. For our audience, it's a cost of $7.2 million to keep that program going, but it's very important for us to do that. We have about 50 people who could retire in January. Maybe it's a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
but, we train 50, we lose 50, we haven't gained any ground. And
yeah,
that's what
absolutely.
It's all at.
We have about 70 officers that can retire in this next fiscal year.
Okay, so my numbers are off.
I'm sorry?
My numbers are off.
No, well, they're close. 50, 70, Councilmember, you're fine. Listen, we got but yeah, I mean, and so without the Hire Ahead, we never get we are authorized 1,151 positions, which I've said many times. We are the least staffed major police department in the country. In fact, I can snap my fingers and have 400 officers now, and we would still be the least staffed major police department in the country. But at 1151, we have to ensure that we are at 1151, which is street-ready officers that are on the street.
Right.
And so without the Hire Ahead, without the hire ahead, we would never get to a true 1151. Now with the hire ahead, let's get to 1151. And then at that point, then we need to have another conversation about where do we want to go from there.
Yep.
But let's get to a true 1151 first. And with your help, you've been unbelievably helpful with it. Hopefully we'll get there.
Very good. Sounds good. So I'm going to take a question that was sent in to us from Jennifer Newman. She wanted to thank you and the department for your hard work. She enjoyed the video reading that you did on rude tweets. Says you have a sense of humor. Tell us about what Jennifer's talking about. You have some rude tweets that you...
Well, you know what? One of my favorite things that I watch are when Jimmy Fallon does his mean tweets. Athletes have done them before. And you know what? Listen, it was interesting to me. I had, I tweet a lot. And I would tell you 99% of people that respond back are very positive, but every once in a while, there's some people that are downright mean. And so I read those live, the mean ones, and we had a really good time with them.
Well, it made an impact on Jennifer.
Well, I'm glad it did. I was trying for it to be funny and enjoyable. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Listen, in leadership positions, when you do a job like this, you can't take yourself that seriously. You know what? And I've said this quote before, but if you want to be, if you want everyone to like you, then don't be a leader. Go do something else. And I firmly embrace that. And so it was a funny, lighthearted moment that I was able to have with my command staff. And there was a lot of people in the community enjoyed it. At the end of the day, council member, you know this probably better than most. When I'm not in this uniform, I'm just a normal guy. That likes to have a good time like anybody else. And you know what? I think doing things like that really humanize us more, especially in times like this, to say that, hey, you know what? My uniform doesn't define me.
Right.
I am who I am. And that was one of those fun things we did.
Well, very, very well said. Your uniform does not define you, but it sets a code of conduct when you wear it.
When I wear it, yes, council member.
What you do personally at home, I have no idea. Okay, I have when I go out and about, I get questioned all the time, and you see it on Nextdoor. Why is the helicopter flying overhead? Can you not tell us why? Anyone know what's going on? Can you? So I hear lots of reasons as to why the helicopter's flying overhead. First of all, can you tell people what it cost to fly the helicopter, and that this is not, you just don't put the helicopter up to fly around. It's too expensive to do that. What are they looking for? What are they doing? Why does it feel like they're always in our neighborhood?
Well, you know what? It's interesting, council member, because I'm getting more and more of these, and I think it's by virtue of people are just at home more.
Yeah.
Because the helicopter right now is flying 7 days a week. We got a brand new helicopter thanks to council, and I tell you, it's an invaluable tool. It's an absolutely invaluable tool. And I just got a question from a county supervisor a few days back regarding people asking about it near Hoover Middle School. Well, they were near Hoover Middle School because Hoover Middle School had a burglary alarm. And they went there along with other police officers to try to find who were burglarizing the school. They've assisted in over 1,400 events just this year alone.
Wow.
It's been the first unit on scene 926 events, or 64% of those 1,400 total events of the year. And here's why it's important. It's important because from the air, they're able to look down and give officers that are incoming valuable information. I'll give you an example. You get a call of a disturbance with a weapon. As officers are going there, the helicopter above can tell them, hey, the individual's actually outside with a rifle. Well, that's going to dictate the officers to do something else. That could have possibly saved their life. It's been there, and it's helped officers make 313 arrests. It's helped in 47 vehicle pursuits, and has 100% capture rate when the helicopters used in vehicle pursuits, which are one of the most dangerous things law enforcement can do. It's assisted in 65-foot pursuits, resulting in 106 arrests, and again, another 100% capture rate. It assists outside law enforcement agencies on 60 events this year, and it's helped the fire department on 13 events. And so, I'm finding myself having to like justify its use over and over. But no, they're not. They're generally not responding to the barking dog call, the cat in the tree call. They're going to calls to assist officers. One of the things we're finding out, we use them during Cinco de Mayo to go over crowds and order them to disperse, and crowds did it. We use them to check on businesses, to check on schools. We had an uptick in commercial burglary with our schools. Well, we're a large city with almost 300 schools in San Jose. I don't have a police officer to send to every single one. So the easiest way to get there, the helicopter goes, shines the light, sees what's going on, and checks on our businesses. So in addition to all they do, it's an invaluable tool. It keeps our officers safe, helps us catch the criminal. And I mean, I think that's something that the community should sleep better with. When you hear the helicopter, I mean, honestly, I get it. I get that it can be intrusive at times. And I know I probably say this because I'm biased and I know why it's above, but you are my council member as well, as you well know. And I've heard it in our neighborhood also. And to me, it gives me a sense of, okay, they're bringing out all the tools to get their job done. And I hope the community sees that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it could be that people are home all day and they notice it a little bit more. And aren't you also looking for senior citizens who might be lost? I get a silver alert sometimes saying that you're looking for an older gentleman who might be an Alzheimer's person who's left home. And I see the helicopter sometimes in that general neighborhood. So
yeah, it helps with that. I mean, again, it really assists us. I mean, here's the thing: we do everything. I mean, I couldn't be prouder of the men and women we have. You would ask them, they wouldn't know. I mean, I'm sure they've heard me say it, but they probably wouldn't know that they're the least staffed major police department in the country. But we know how to do so much with so little that other departments don't have, that we use every tool possible to act as a force multiplier for us. And that helicopter assists us in that way, and people are safer with it. And I'll die on the vine on that one. I mean, that thing is an invaluable tool, and we're safer with it.
Very good, thank you. I'm going to move on to a question from Molly McLeod. How is mass incarceration making the health dangers of COVID-19 worse? What alternatives are better than criminalization, and what resources could be devoted to restorative practices?
Well, a lot of those questions, again, I don't know I'm not a doctor, and I don't run a jail to know the dangers or what jails can or can't do with regards to COVID. I'll tell you, education is the most important part. Honestly, I will tell you this: if my officers could go out, let's stipulate to this: there's evil that exists in this world, okay, and that's why. And I'd like to think that's why people want police in this city. To me, it starts with education. We can have a very long conversation regarding this, but education is important to me. I know as I look in our most vulnerable neighborhoods, where I can send police officers multiple times an hour, they'll take a criminal off the street or what have you, but they're not solving the root problem. And the root problem is not necessarily a law enforcement issue. It's oftentimes when we have these conversations about incarceration and other things, is that you have a police department, you have a DA, maybe you have a judge, and maybe probation's there. But I ask the question because I'm invited to these panels all the time, and I go, okay, where are schools in this?
Yeah.
Where are jobs? Where are big businesses giving jobs to people?
Right.
And so, like, to me, one of the things that we adopted an area in San Jose off of near King and Story called Poco Way. And we really poured every possible program we had into those kids in 4th and 5th grade. And because my goal is to ensure that those kids stay in school and are able to come back to Poco. The only thing that's going to save our neighborhoods are the neighborhoods themselves becoming stronger. We started a scholarship. I went to my foundation and started a scholarship so that we can ensure that if kids that kids can go to school. I think, to me, education is the number one piece. I mean, I know this topic, and there's a lot of other things people could do. From my personal opinion, we have to really start when they're young. We got to keep our kids educated. We got to keep our kids in school. We need jobs for individuals, and we'll do that. I mean, the same hotspots in San Jose since 1992, since I've been here, are the same hotspots we have today. We can police them all we want, but if we don't deal with the root problems of poverty and education, it's going to be a difficult go.
14 years on the school board, education is hugely important to me, still is. It isn't just the education that they're receiving and the learning, the ability to do math or recite geography or historical statistics. It's about the self-esteem and confidence students achieve by doing well and understanding how the world works. So education really is really important in how our kids survive and then thrive. It offers them a level of hope and helps them see that they can get out of poverty through hard work. And hard work is really important for all of us. And having classes from home is not as easy as having classes when you're engaged with the teacher in their classroom. But thank you for mentioning education as an important tool, because really it's the start and the end of how people and our kids will be successful and thrive in the end. Now I'm going to get to a specific question related to District 9. And this is specific to a particular street and traffic along Branham near Pearl and Navarrez. We have heard lately, I attended a neighborhood association with Pinehurst neighborhood, which is off Pearl just south of Branham. And they were complaining about more sideshows, more racing and things occurring on Branham. And so the question from Jackie Reed is, can we have more officers for the excessive speeders on Branham from Pearl to Narvaez, basically anytime, day and night? And I can tell you, Chief, that the neighbors have been complaining this isn't just happening in the evening, it's daytime. Several accidents have already been where they've run into fences dividing Branham, never reported. Cars, motorcycles, Indy 500, also known as Branham 500.
Well, one of the things I'll say, and I'll start off with the not positive, the negative, I suppose, is in 2009, we had nearly 1,400 police officers in the department. Today, with a larger population, we're budgeted for 1,151. I say that because our traffic unit that used to be have 45 or 50 motor officers that would drive around the city back in 2009. Today we have 10 that we have to divide throughout the city and in other different corridors. When we deal with issues, one of the things that we simply just can't, like when I had 45 to 50, I can set officers and leave them there for a long period of time for different areas and have them be their spot for 6 months as an example, or a shift at your project. Now we're in a situation where I have to move officers around to deal with issues and then move on to the next. And if they have to come back, they'll come back. But it's almost like a revolving list that officers have to come back to. Having said that, when issues arise, I give the captains, the division captains, a lot of autonomy to take care of issues and to take care of their council members and to take care of their residents. And so these type of ideas to work with the captain to say, can we do a little bit more enforcement are definitely things that we can do on a patrol level. Yes, can we send out our motor units? Absolutely, to do some things, but we have to understand and be realistic that they're not going to be able to stay there. But there's other things that patrol can do. So having those conversations with your captain to think outside, to not just think outside the box, but to act outside the box are very important.
And to that point, we've engaged the captain on this subject, and we're discussing ways on slowing down the traffic there. And we've actually, through our budget process, our local district budget process, we have requested funding for a couple of tools that will modify the road on Branham and slow it down, because actually we've seen the speeds pick up even though the bike lane has been installed since Branham was recently repaved, the traffic has picked up, speed picks up when you have new pavement. And so we have a couple of things that we've requested from our essential service budget that will help slow down traffic theoretically on Branham if that gets approved by the mayor. So we're all working on this together, and we've definitely been in contact with the captain. Okay, here is a question from Robert Grant Ash, and he says, when you call 911 ask for CIT trained officers, how do you know that they are CIT trained? Do we just take their word, or is there a database? Maybe you can start by talking about what the CIT training is, and tell us a little bit about the training and why that may be more important to have someone CIT trained versus not.
Great question. It's a great question. So let me just back up a little bit. So when we started the crisis intervention training, which is what CIT training was, I mean, I wasn't a chief yet, but what the thinking was by the experts is that only officers that wanted to do that should be trained in that. When I became chief, the decision that I made was that, you know what, even if you learn one tool, I want everyone to go through it. So I made a commitment in 2016 that every member of this police department would get trained in CIT. And I think to date, I think 86%, if not more, of the department is CIT trained. Any recruit, let me back up. I mean, odds are that if a patrol officer is responding to a call, odds are they're CIT trained. And I'll say this because over 50% of our patrol force has less than 5 years on. And I know when I took over, every police recruit gets trained in CIT. There was a study that came out last year from the civil grand jury that said that actually wanted police departments to do 9 different things. And we met 7 of those 9 things. Of the 2 issues that we did not meet was, 1, having recurring training, which we're doing now. And the other thing was they wanted the class size smaller. That we won't be able to do. We're a large department, and I want to get everybody in the class. And so we're chipping away, and soon we're going to be at 100%. So when we have the officers out there, so if you're requesting a CIT officer, I could almost guarantee you that the CIT officer is responding. You know, when I started, I always used to ask the question, hey, were they CIT trained? And maybe on an incident. When I started as chief, or assistant chief, quite frankly, nearly 8 years ago. And every once in a while, like if there were 4 officers there, maybe 1 was CIT. Today, if I have a similar incident, all 4 are CIT. And so we've made great strides in it. The training is 40 hours long that everyone goes through. So that's another dynamic that we have to deal with, right? Because getting people off the street to go through training is not easy. But I will tell you the next step that I would love to take this department in at some point before my tenure is done here is to combine CIT officers with an actual clinician in a car together. Finding those clinicians is not an easy task, I will say, because they're not used to shift work. That's not the direction that their profession takes them generally. Mm-hmm. But my dream is to have a CIT trained officer with an actual civilian clinician in the vehicle that can go out and respond to these type of calls. And would it be like a super CIT unit? I mean, you know, obviously we're not where we want to be there, but that is a goal that I think that will be the next step of CIT in the city.
Sounds like a good goal to have and to move forward to. Okay, now I have a question from Robert Gillis. I'm not sure this is a question for you, but I'll pose it to you. Why are dogs not allowed off leash at Camden Community Center? Every evening there are half a dozen of dogs and dog owners who are running off leash, and then their owners don't pick up the mess that they leave, and their dogs are creating havoc a little bit. How do you respond to that, to animal complaints?
Probably one of the lower level priorities that we have. I'm not going to lie to you, or to Robert, who I know actually. But you know, it's one of the lower. I mean, generally speaking, when we're not in shelter in place, we have code enforcement, we have park rangers, we have people that can deal with those issues. You know, I hate to deal with every issue that we have as a police related issue. You know, having owners not taking care of their dogs because their dogs are defecating, not necessarily a role for law enforcement, in my opinion, but we do have other services that normally help. Again, park rangers, and park rangers, and then also, I just lost my train of thought, code enforcement and other things of that nature can normally help when we're not in shelter in place. But we'll handle any disturbance. Like, we just put it in the queue. So if there's a disturbance and people have that, I mean, if they call 311, I mean, someone will respond. To the extent that someone's going to get a ticket or a citation for that, I wouldn't hold out hope for that. We would love to be educational about that. And you know what, if it's something that we need to do, if it's something that the community center needs to message more, then do that. One thing that I have found so much, regardless of what side of the fence you're on with wearing a mask, as an example, because that's been such an issue, like, more and more people, even without a mandate, are wearing masks just because people have been telling them it's the right thing to do. I mean, it strikes me that if that is an issue, that working on communication with the community center to say, hey, here are the rules. And I'd always draw it akin to the red curb scenario. And this is my analogy. And I think if those rules were posted, I think a lot of people would follow them. And this is what I mean by that. I mean, most people, most good residents and responsible residents are not going to park at a red curb.
Yeah.
And of those that do park at a red curb, if someone comes by or a police officer comes by and says, hey, you got to move, they're going to move. It's a very small percentage they're going to snub their nose at the rule. So I think, to Robert's point, I think in maybe working with your office council members and talking to the community center and having better signage, and having some level of enforcement, not up to law enforcement, to say, if you're not following the rules, you're going to need to leave, and have someone monitoring that. And if a disturbance arises from that, then obviously we respond out.
Yeah, this is a frustrating issue, and I tried solving it as a school board member, because dog owners are off leash, are having their dogs off leash on all of our campuses and creating a mess. And then the little kiddos are running around and stepping in it the next day. It's a problem. And even signage doesn't solve it, because some people just aren't paying attention or don't care. Anyway, it's something that we can educate, but some people are never going to follow the rules in related to that. But I don't see, if you're responding to a burglary or a dog off leash, I would hope that you're responding to the burglary first and not the dog off leash.
And we will be, Councilmember.
They're both important to someone. Okay. We are at 12:55, so I have 5 minutes left. So let me see, what question can I ask you? That you haven't discussed already. I just to follow up, I see that there was a question from Donna Cattengill about the camera rebate programs. The camera rebate program, you can apply whether you're from another district or not to us. Other council districts do not have the funds. We do, but when the pot of money is gone, it's gone. So I do know we have some funds available, and if you would like to apply, please do, and we'll see what we can do if we have enough funds available. You think there are going to be any protests here in regards to Minneapolis?
We've had some small ones, Councilmember. I think there was another one that was scheduled for today at 2, actually, at City Hall. But yesterday's was small and peaceful. We just hope they continue to be peaceful. Obviously, what's going on in Minneapolis is not pretty. And so we're hopeful that that doesn't arise here. Obviously, you know what, in these type of times, the community needs an opportunity to vent. And I fully support their opportunity to vent, but they need to vent peacefully. Yeah. Because we're not going to tolerate violence. We're not going to tolerate property damage. But we will absolutely respect people's right to vent and people's right to free speech.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that. Here's a question from Timothy Lund that relates to homelessness and trash and encampments and such. So I'm just going to read it in its entirety. Chief, would love to hear something about how the police can help with all the tent camps and parked RV issues that District 9 is experiencing. I just drove by Donna Lane, and in back of Big Lots, there's a tent camp forming right now. We've actually had tent camp there for a long time, on and off. Garbage seems to be piling up, but it doesn't seem to be on anyone's radar. Usually leads to increased crime in our neighborhood. What's the process for dealing with these campsites? We see several vehicles loaded with bikes and parts for sale in the Big Lots parking lot. We know they have to be stolen. Butcher Park, as an example, has been a hub for drug abuse in the past, and it's always on our minds that it could spill into the neighborhood. I'm sure it also is happening elsewhere as well. What is the plan to control this type of activity, or is this the city's issue? And I'll let you respond from a police side, and then we'll respond from the city side, because it's both.
Yeah, of course. It's a very complicated issue, obviously, and I'll let you deal with everything that you guys are doing to help with the homeless and housing. From our perspective, and I've said this many times, I used to be the captain downtown and dealt with homeless issues all the time. And you know what? Being homeless in it by itself is not a crime. We're certainly not trying to criminalize our unhoused, but we need to deal with the criminal issues and the quality of life issues that can arise from that as well. It's one of the reasons I restarted our street crimes unit. I wanted a unit specifically. Now we don't have a lot of them, obviously, but I wanted a unit that specifically dealt with the criminal element that arises in these types of environments, not only to protect housed individuals in neighborhoods, but to protect our unhoused that get victimized by the criminal element that resides there. That's important to me. Just my patch says San Jose police. It doesn't say police of the housed. I want to provide security to all of our residents, whether they're in a home or not. And so, that's from a law enforcement perspective. Oftentimes there's a lot of these that pop up. We just don't have the resources to go to all of them. We work closely with housing to conduct abatements. But unfortunately with COVID, prior to COVID, one of the reasons they weren't doing abatements was because of the census. And then COVID happened. And so abatements. So yes, I live in the city, and I see them popping up, and I know they don't look pleasant. I know there is a portion of our unhoused community that provides this criminal type of element and enterprise. Not all. And I want to make that sure that a criminal is a criminal, whether they're housed or unhoused, and they prey on all of us. And so we're here to do that. But really, I think from that point, it really goes to what our city's doing with regards to doing as much as we can to house people.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And we, as you said, we're not doing abatements anymore where we had pre-COVID. I'm sure that they will pick up again afterwards, but we can, at the council office, if anyone has a neighborhood that they're concerned about, that they see homeless encampments coming in, please let us know, and we'll try to at least get services over there to take a look at them. And we can't get them to move on, but we can certainly get them to clean up. And if there is crime, send people over there to that will investigate a little bit. I know we've been asked about other neighborhoods, and I contact the captain. The captain sends some officers over there, and they do some investigation to determine, what the situation is. But we will continue to do that. So if any neighbors have any concerns about that, please reach out to the council office at District 9 at sanjoseca.gov, and we'll be able to respond to you. But it's a concern. The trash can be cleaned up. We can bring them garbage bags and help and encourage them, but we're not moving them on right now. So not at this point. So Chief, that brings us to the end of our time.
It flew by.
I know, an hour, just like that. I want to thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. It's really important for us to hear your thoughts on public safety. We are in partnership to make our community safe, and anything I can do to help with the budget or help advocate for you, I'm there. I'm one of your partners in crime and will help us all be successful. I want to thank you for your integrity, your honesty, your openness, and your leadership with the city of San Jose. And I look for many more years with you at the helm.
Thank you, council member. Again, I appreciate being on. I love my city. I love my community, whether it's whether people are frustrated or just want information. I love it. I love what I do. These men and women make it easy. I love them. It's a great department. We're rising again. Thank you for your continued support. The men and women truly appreciate it. And I'll be here whenever you need me.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you all for participating in our Facebook Live with Captain Eddie Garcia. Chief Eddie Garcia. Sorry, Chief.
Great, and our Facebook Live is off, and now we just have 31 participants on here.
Great. How many Facebookers did we get?
We got quite a number. We got quite a good number. I believe something like 100, somewhere around there.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I'm glad that we were able to get about 30 other individuals on here. I see Rudy's on here, Tim Lippy, Carlo, Anna, Camarella. Yeah.
Cheryl's here. That's great.
Great. Awesome.
Wonderful.
Well, Pam, I am going to end the Zoom session right now, and I'm going to give you a call separately.
Okay, sounds good. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Oh, there's Marion even.